Senator Hirono, are you within
Yes.
Zoom range? Take it away.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Judge Garland. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
I will start with two preliminary questions that I ask every nominee who comes before any of the committees on which I sit. And these two questions are, since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No.
Judge Garland, considering that we just had a president who did not think the rule of law applied to him, I'm gratified to hear that so many of my Republican colleagues are asking you whether you, as Attorney General, will follow the rule of law. And of course, you will. I want to get to consent decrees, because I don't think that you've been asked about consent decrees yet. And the Justice Department Civil Rights Division has described consent decrees as, I quote, most effective in ensuring accountability, transparency, and flexibility for accomplishing complex institutional reforms, end quote. So despite their effectiveness, however, the Trump administration was openly hostile to consent decrees. In November 2018, Attorney General Jeff Sessions issued a memo that drastically curtailed their use in bringing police departments into compliance with the Constitution. The result was that the Trump administration did not enter into a single new consent decree with any law enforcement agency suspected of systemic abuse of constitutional rights, and they also actively undermined existing consent decrees. All this while excessive force by police in Minneapolis, Louisville, Kenosha, and other cities led to one of the biggest social justice movements this country has ever seen. What is your view, Judge Garland, of the role of pattern and practice investigations and consent decrees in addressing civil rights abuses by police?
I thank you for this question, Senator. I think police accountability is an essential element of the ability of a police department to have credibility with the community, and without credibility and trust, a police department cannot do its job of ensuring the safety of the community. Police officers who violate the Constitution must be held accountable, and police officers who follow the Constitution want police officers who do not to be held accountable for just that reason, because it leads to a taint on all police officers, which would be unfair. Congress has given the Justice Department the authority and the responsibility to investigate patterns or practices of law enforcement entities' conduct that violate the Constitution and laws of the United States. That's the statutory responsibility of the Justice Department. And so it is an important tool the department has for ensuring accountability. The statute further provides that if the department finds this pattern or practice of unconstitutional conduct, that it can seek equitable remedies from the court. And one of the kinds of equitable remedies which has proven effective in the past are consent decrees. So where they are necessary to assure accountability, it's very important that we use that tool. That is not the only tool available to the Justice Department. We can use grant making to provide funds for police departments to reform themselves, to make themselves more accountable. We can provide technical assistance. We can provide incentives. All of these are a set of tools, and the Justice Department has been given these tools by the Congress, and it should use all of them.
So you emphasize accountability of police departments, and the Justice Department said that consent decrees, which, by the way, are not just one-sided, they are entered into, as I understand it, after much dialogue and discussion with the affected police department. So they are definitely a tool. By your answer, I hope that you plan to re-engage the Justice Department in enforcing and abiding by the existing consent decrees, because I noted that the previous administration had undermined the existing consent decrees.
Well, I think if there is an existing consent decree, then we are certainly going to require adherence to it, yes.
You've been asked a number of questions about in my view, the active voter suppression laws that are being enacted, particularly, of course, after the Shelby County decision that gutted one of the major provisions of the Voting Rights Act, leaving Section 2, that still gives the Attorney General's office some tools to go after those states that are contemplating legislation that, in effect, will result in voter suppression. Are you aware of any evidence of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 presidential election, or for that matter, any other election?
No, Senator. All I know, of course, is what I've been able to glean from the public reports of government agencies. The Department of Homeland Security in the previous administration publicly described the last election as the most secure in American history. Some 60 or more courts rejected claims of fraud in the election, some on legal grounds, but many after providing an opportunity for the submission of evidence, and rejected the evidence that was submitted as insufficient. And Attorney General Barr authorized the U.S. attorneys to investigate voter fraud after the election and before certification. And at the conclusion, he announced that the department had not found evidence sufficiently material of widespread voter fraud to have had an effect on the election.
Thank you, Judge Garland. I am running out of time. I just wanted to reiterate that I heard your earlier response that you would work with Congress to determine whether a pre-clearance provision should be reenacted. There's just one more thing that I wanted to note, and that is your acknowledgement that hate crimes against the AAPI community is definitely rising, and that you will do everything you can to make sure that that there is enforcement of the laws against these kinds of crimes. And I just noted that just a few weeks ago, an 85-year-old man died after he was abruptly attacked while out on a morning walk in San Francisco. And in Oakland, in Oakland's Chinatown neighborhood, a man violently shoved and injured a 91-year-old man, a 60-year-old man, and a 55-year-old woman. And each of these cases, the victims were AAPI community members. Thank you. I do have additional questions. I'll wait for a round two. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Senator Hirono.